All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Fearcast. This is the podcast dedicated to OCD and anxiety spectrum disorders and getting your life back. I'm your host, Kevin Foss, and I'm a licensed therapist specializing in OCD and anxiety disorders. And thank you so much for joining me today for this episode. So, if you are new to this podcast, this is a question and answer based show. You can send me questions in, and I will read them, consider them, and likely put them up on a future episode, as I am doing today. There are a lot of ways that you can get me questions. And as I said, I've mentioned before, this podcast runs on your questions. So if you have concerns, questions, that's what this is for. And what I love about it is that it's anonymous, right? You don't have to say your real name. And in fact, today's person is not mentioning their real name, and okay, they don't have to. And if you are a little concerned, you can always make your name anonymous. I will likely read whatever name you give me. I will say this: the person's real name is not Cheesecake Destroyer, as they said that they are, but today I am reading Cheesecake Destroyer's question. So, if you have a question, an audio question is going to go to the top of the list. You can send me an audio question by finding me at Instagram. I am Fearcast Podcast over there. Send me a DM, put a message in there, or put an audio question in, and I will get it. You can also go over to fearcastpodcast.com, and you can click on the speech pipe button at the top of the page, and you can record your question there. It will get to me. But of course, you can always send it to me the old-fashioned way, which is to click on the submit a question link at Fearcast Podcast and type in your question there, and I will get it. I will ask for your real name and email address just for safety purposes and legal reasons and all that stuff, but I will likely never have to message you. So there is that. But again, this is all anonymous to everyone out there. All right, so the question today is going to be is a little bit of a departure from a typical, just kind of straightforward question, but I think it reflects something that's really important that tends to happen, and that I'm going to go through a little bit of something that I would sometimes do in the cognitive restructuring piece of treatment, and I think it's important, and it's important to do. I know there is a lot of disagreement on how much cognitive restructuring takes place within OCD treatment, and it goes back and forth on this. And there will be great therapists out there who will disagree on how much cognitive restructuring should happen and how much shouldn't happen. But I'm going to get into that in just a moment. Before I do that, I want to tell everybody about a local conference. If you're local to Southern California, our local IOCDF chapter, OCD SoCal, is putting on a speaker series, kind of a mini conference at one of the local colleges, at Orange Coast College, I'm going to be speaking at that, and as will a bunch of other fantastic therapists. So go check this out. And here's the best part. It's super cheap. I don't know how they're making it so cheap. Early bird tickets, $10. General admission, $15. Like the week of, it's going to be $18. And it includes lunch. They're going to feed you as well for that price. I don't think you can really get lunch anywhere for $10, and it's usually pretty stinking good. It's like a sandwich, and there's a cookie and chips, and like it's good. So I've been to it a bunch of times, and I've never been disappointed by the food, and I hope you have not been disappointed by the speakers. But if you're looking to just get a little bit of information about OCD and don't know where to start, that's a great place. If you are trying to get connected with a therapist or want to just get more involved with the local OCD community, that's a great place to start as well. If you're a professional who is looking to learn a little bit more about OCD treatment and want to start making connections with OCD therapists in the area, that's a great place to start. So go check it out. I haven't mentioned what it is. It is Saturday, May 30th. Go check it out from 10 to 3. It's great. It's awesome. I have nothing. I only have good things to say about this. All right, let me get that screen to go away, and we are going to get into the question. So this is a old school emailed question. So I'm going to read it. So you do have to hear my voice, and I'm going to read it, and I'm going to try to make it not terrible. So again, this comes from Cheesecake Destroyer. It's very aggressive towards said cheesecake, but I get it, man. around Christmas, the missus and I do something that we call the cheesecake diet, which is to go to Costco and buy a cheesecake. And if you know what their cheesecake looks like, it's enormous. It's very big. And I mean, the cheesecake is not going to eat itself. So obviously we have to eat the whole cheesecake as fast as we possibly can. And we do. Do we regret it? No, not at all. I don't think there's ever been a moment where we said, boy, we should stop this, or that's too much cheesecake. I don't think it's possible. If those words are being said by any of you, so you need to repent of that. I think you need to reflect on your choices and recognize you're doing good things by destroying the cheesecake. All right, let's get on to this. All right, so they say, for a while, I've dealt with quite a few types of OCD. They say harm OCD, sexual orientation, staring OCD. And they say, for a while now lately, I've been struggling with being awkward and creepy towards women. I believe in the past I had either or mostly probably been annoying, but also overstepped and been creepy towards women before. I'm currently trying to be better, and I know that even aside from my intrusive thoughts of being dangerous or creepy, women do actually go through a lot when it comes to danger, creepy men, and even just systematic misogyny. The OCD really affected my confidence for a very long time, but I've been getting better, and I'm showing up slowly how I want to be. Awesome. They go on to say, however, an issue I've been going through is I really enjoy smoking sometimes. And they say marijuana in quotes. So I suppose, sure. Smoking marijuana sometimes. And often I'll walk around, listen to music, make music, etc. Though sometimes I do watch adult films. Long back, I told my therapist about this, and she thinks it's okay. But sometimes I will do it and get really worried about being a creep, rude, and just being untrustworthy for women. They go on to say, while I'm a lot more confident than I used to be, sometimes these thoughts really put me down, and I feel bad, as I know that I've been either creepy or awkward in the past. Overall, the main issue is that sometimes these thoughts of being a creep and feelings about that will really get me stuck. I want to be accountable, respectful, a good friend, and also just be myself. But I do wonder if watching porn is negative to my mental health as an unhealthy practice in general, as I want to grow and navigate new ways to carry myself. All right, Cheesecake Destroyer, this was a great question, and I appreciate you sharing this and being so vulnerable with us. So I wanted to really put this question up here because I think these are questions and concerns that a lot of people do have. They're questioning, they might go through periods of time in their life when they're saying, I kind of want to, do things better or improve myself in some ways. And what are some areas in my life that I can cut out or do better? And I think that's a healthy way for us as people to kind of approach life, right? Now, granted, there are going to be some folks out there, I'm looking at the moral scroop folks, that are going to be spending way too much time doing this. And they're going to be spending hours and hours and hours doing this and really scrutinizing every little thing they do to try to suss out any little teeny tiny way that they could be offensive. Now, I'll say this, I don't know you. I don't know how creepy you are or aren't. Right? You may be a completely fine, upstanding person. You may be a super creep. I don't know. So I can't really speak to that, but I'll address a little bit of that in the past or in the future in this podcast. So the first thing I want to say is I can't make a values judgment or a decision for you with whether or not porn or marijuana or anything else in your life is something that you ought to cut out. Every therapist is going to have their own opinion on things. Some people will say porn is good for you. Some they're going to say it's really bad for you. And the therapist's job, my job, is not to put my opinions on you or for you to take on my values, whatever they may be, about things in your life. My job is to be as Alec Pollard. By the way, Alec Pollard is going to be at that little OCD conference. I'm just saying, and I'm super excited. Alec Pollard's the best. He's kind of I like to say Alec Pollard is my spirit animal when it comes to OCD. And if you go see him, you will see why. But he calls himself the OCD police, right? His job is just to point out where OCD is and is not there, and is to take down OCD when he sees it, right? That's generally speaking what OCD therapists are meant to do, right? But what I hear in your email is a kind of a values call. Is it bad for me? And I think that's one of your main questions: is watching porn bad for me? So I think I think that an overall question then to ask is like, how do I know whether or not something is indeed bad for me, right? When does something become bad for me? Because there's a lot of things that we do that can be good for us, and a lot of things that we do that can eventually become bad for us, right? So, I mean, one of the main things to think about is maybe an obvious one, but are you seeing any unwanted or negative effects in your life because of this thing that you're doing, right? I'll talk a little bit more about some details about porn, broadly speaking, that could be a consideration. But I would really encourage you to think about, where are you seeing some of these negative effects, and how are you seeing those negative effects, right? And of course, to the converse of this, I can certainly imagine where, and there will be people out there who will disagree with me, that watching porn could be good for you or helpful for you. And I can't say broadly it is a good thing or it is a bad thing. It's a thing. Is it good for you or bad for you is the question, right? And it's even that is even putting it in these black and white terms that may ultimately be unhelpful for us in this conversation too, right? In what ways is it helpful for you? In what ways is it unhelpful for you, right? A similar thing is alcohol good or bad for you? The answer is yes, perhaps, right? Is smoking good or bad for you? And I'm going to give a brief example of this, is that as many of you know, I have lung problems, and I talked to one of my pulmonologists back in the day. It's a lung doctor. And I said, hey, doc, there's talk about, the medical or the health benefits of like alcohol, right? Are there any health benefits to smoking? This was not me trying to get approval to smoke, because that wasn't going to be a problem. But she sat there for a moment and she went, coal miners back in the day used to smoke 2 cigarettes a day just to develop enough of a cough to try to get out some of the coal dust and to prevent black lung. Outside of that, no, there are no health benefits. So we can see that in this very specific circumstance, it could be helpful. Is smoking good for you? No, broadly speaking, but in this one context it is. So we can't then say good or bad for you. It has to be this rounding up sort of way, right? So what I'm saying is we want to push against this ultimately good, ultimately bad. Another thing is, and I think maybe this is related, is marijuana, or I'll say this, marijuana, it sounds like maybe exacerbating the OCD paranoia that you are this bad person, right? But does that mean that you should cut out weed entirely? I don't know. It may be one of those things that's similar to porn, where you have to consider, is it benefiting me or is it causing more problems than it's solving, right? Or causing more problems than it's actually helping or is enjoyable, right? But I will say this, it sounds like if it is indeed feeding back into the obsession, making the obsession worse, and kind of confirming the previously held paranoia, the obsession about women, maybe it's more of a problem than it's not, right? And lastly, I'll say this. No one has ever said, boy, you know what? I quit one of my vices. Like I quit alcohol, I quit porn, and my life got worse, right? Generally speaking, if we quit a vice, our life typically either stays the same or is improved in one way or another, and improves in more ways than it was had we continued to do that vice. So that is something to consider. That is this worth it to you in the long run, broadly? Okay. All right. So the obsession that I'm hearing in this is, am I being creepy towards women? And I think that I think in terms of the feared story, right? That may be the feared story. It may be something bigger, right? But what I think, as I mentioned earlier, I think it reflects this value of wanting to be this good person and this fear that maybe I'm this bad person, right? Is there moral perfectionism going on? I think perhaps. Is there perhaps real event OCD going on, right? Real event is the OCD subtype we have, or we call when There's an obsession based on a previous event, right? So I don't know if Cheesecake Destroyer, you're experiencing something where, you were creepy in the past, or there's a moment or moments in the past that you're reflecting on, and your OCD is going, boy, thanks to this moment, you are a creep. So therefore, you need to constantly be vigilant about your creepiness, and you need to eliminate any possibility of creepiness now and henceforth, right? And that can exacerbate. And it takes something good, wanting to be a improving, better person, and it makes it into an ultimate thing where you're scrutinizing every little bit, right? Okay, so let's just jump into this. So there are a couple of things that we'll get into. So first is a cognitive restructuring piece. So this is where in cognitive behavioral therapy, we're going to look at the experience, we're looking at the thoughts that you're having, and we're going to try to evaluate the legitimacy of that story. Is it exacerbated? Is it exaggerated? Is it inaccurate in some ways? Is there another way to think about it? Or is it perfectly spot on and your brain is nailing it? I'm willing to, but it's not, because generally speaking, our brain sucks at evaluating things. But yet we're going to use our brain. You get what I'm saying. All right. So the one of the things I already asked is, like, what's the evidence to say that you've been a creep in the past, right? Is it based in specific bits, right? From someone telling you, from someone confronting you and saying, hey, this was really creepy. Or is it kind of based on your assumption, right? Your interpretation of it, which isn't to say it's absolutely wrong, but do you get more feedback saying that you are a good person, or do you get what I'm saying, good person, or do you get more feedback saying, you kind of creep people out, bro? I don't know. So there are some cognitive distortions that may be going on here. One is all or nothing thinking, where we put ourselves in this category, right? I am either creepy or not creepy. It's a false dichotomy because, it's like saying I am good or I'm bad. Is a knife good or bad? Yes, it can be used for self-protection. It can be used to cut food. It can be used to open a package. It can be used to open a person, right? So it's neither good nor bad. It just is. Is there labeling going on? Are you just using this giant label on yourself that is just stigmatizing you and making you feel like garbage? Similarly, is it that label giving into kind of neglecting the positive, right? Is that label basically saying this is all of who I am, and I'm casually ignoring every piece that would contradict that and only speak to the negative? Is there tunnel vision where you're hyper focusing on times that you have been creepy, right? To that end, I think in this process, it's important to also accept that we have all been creepy to somebody. We've been creepy, we've been odd, we've been awkward with somebody in the past. It's a reality. I know I have, not because I've intentionally tried to be creepy, though sometimes I've intentionally tried to be a goofball and weird and it just didn't come out right. And sometimes we're going to be a creep. That's a reality for every single person out there, including you and including me. So it's one of those things that, we want to look at this situation and look at the way that you're considering yourself in relation to other people, right? You also mentioned in the past, I believe that I was overstepping or annoying, et cetera. And again, to that point is, how do you know? Is it based in kind of a general assumption, kind of based on that existential likelihood that we, we're all creepy existentially, or all creepy broadly speaking? Or again, are you looking at specific events, or is this just you being excessively critical and excessively scrupulous about yourself? Okay. I think also part of this, to speak against porn, I suppose, is there can be, for a lot of folks, some negative impacts of porn usage, right? I think broadly speaking, porn tends to portray kind of sexual dynamic in an exaggerated, inaccurate, and often degrading ways. And I think that's, and again, there will be people who will say, but there is ethical porn, or there is porn that is better than others, or there is porn that is, specifically romantic, or specifically just more erotic, or more focused on the couple. Sure, there's all of that. But the fact that we have to say, but there's these caveats to it, rather than this is kind of what porn is, I think speaks to that broad fact is that it can produce some negative and exaggerated perspectives, right? Oftentimes it portrays more extreme, more violent, more varsity level aspects of sex as routine and expected rather than things that are unique or unique kinks that individuals are into, rather than these are things that people do and people do on a regular basis, whereas they might not be standard fare for the average person, right? Porn further tends to minimize and ignore conversations about consent, safety, mutual pleasure, and enjoyment, right? I think it is important to recognize those facts as we're considering this. But that being said, I want to point out that, you know, there's media out there that we consume on a regular basis that is also exaggerated and distorted and shows a inaccurate view of the world around us, right? So, you know, think about thrillers or horror movies or superhero movies, comic books for that matter. There's an excessive amounts of violence. There's portrayals of, you know, unrealistic portrayals of the human body, unrealistic portrayals of communication and interaction with each other. But that being said, we would categorize those and say, well, that's entertainment. That's not meant to be fact. That's not meant to be how we interact with other people. Are you, Cheesecake Destroyer, able to segment porn usage well and say this is exaggerated as the Dan Savage podcast talks about, he calls it kabuki sex. If you're familiar with what kabuki theater is not a portrayal, an accurate portrayal of life. It is wildly exaggerated in every possible way. So if we're going to take that as fact, take that as what life is supposed to be, it's probably going to send us in a very odd and weird direction, right? So to that end, there are two bits of advice that came to mind as I was reading your question. One is from my mom, and the other is from another podcast I listened to called The Holy Post. So one that my mom said was, be careful, little eyes, what you see. Be careful, little ears, what you hear. So meaning we as people need to be cautious and thoughtful about the media that we're consuming and the stuff that we see and the stuff that we talk about. To that end, the other point is the other podcast said, be careful who's discipling you. And I'm paraphrasing it perhaps, but the idea is that the media that we interact with, and I know myself included as a person who is creating media for consumption, that I need to be cautious about what I'm saying and how I'm guiding people and how I'm speaking about these certain topics. I don't want to be flippant inappropriately about things. I want to be thoughtful and measured in the way that I communicate about it. And I also know that, or because I know that the way that people hear about or the way that, or the information people hear will affect the way that you think and will affect your expectations about the world around you and will impact the way that you treat other people out there, right? So be careful who disciples you. You know, if you're listening to certain podcasts or, you know, I know that, like, let's go with the manosphere, right? If you're familiar with that concept. If you're a dude out there who's watching the manosphere type of stuff, Andrew Tate and those sort of people, you're going to get a very exaggerated, distorted, I'll say, view of the world around you. And they would say, I am presenting a backwards view of life. And that's fine because we are presenting perspectives. And again, I think that they're bonkers and crazy and inaccurate and just simply wrong and dangerous. But that maybe is the point. Anyways, what I'm trying to say is, if porn is causing you to carry out and have beliefs about women, relationships, sex, and is causing you to treat people in ways that others would say are creepy, or in ways that you, in retrospect, have said, boy, you know, I really don't like that, then maybe that is something to cut out. Maybe that is something to minimize. Maybe that is something that you need to have some conversation with a therapist or with a close friend who you trust about whether or not this is useful for you. Right? So here's some ideas about ways to kind of evaluate that process for you. So And this is an exercise not to be done every single day or in every single moment, but to be done with a trusted friend or therapist, right? And if you were in my office, I might do this exercise with you. So what I would ask you to probably list all the circumstances in which you think that you've been creepy, right? I'm willing to bet your brain is going to point out certain things. And you'd talk with this friend about those events and see how they qualify and to process whether or not those could be done better, right? Looking at that situation and say, is there something about this that was treating somebody, in a less than way, that I was being demanding, or that I treated them as a subhuman, or treated them in a way that I wouldn't want to be treated myself? Did I treat this person in a way that I would treat my mom or my sister, or any other like really close loved woman in your life, right? And then to say, well, is there a way that I could do that differently or better? Now, why I'm saying that this is helpful, and I know that this could be used inappropriately and ruminative and compulsively and all of that stuff, but I also recognize that you, Cheesecake Destroyer, and me, Kevin Foss, make mistakes and say things and do things that we later would regret. It is not a moment to shame ourselves or to say that we're irredeemable or just plain bad. It's to say, I missed the mark. I missed the mark of who I want to be in my life. So I'm going to try to improve. And we can catch ourselves when we're beating ourselves up and shoving ourselves into that I'm awful and terrible and I need to constantly repent of this, or I need to go way above and beyond, this is compulsive, above and beyond to prove to other people that I'm this good person, or to, self-flagellate so that I can show that I'm feeling bad because I am bad and I'm getting my received and just punishment for you get what I'm saying, right? We want to acknowledge that we make mistakes. Have compassion on ourselves. Say, yeah, I make mistakes. And you know who makes mistakes? Frickin' everybody. You, Cheesecake Destroyer, myself, my wife, my kids, my parents, every friend I've ever had. I could go on and on. We all make mistakes, and that's okay. If you're in that boat, it's a good boat because it's everybody, right? So therefore, we want to extend kindness to ourselves, not beating ourselves up. We want to offer some encouragement. I can do this. I can be better. I can do things differently next time. I'm on my way to improvement, and on the way, I'm going to stumble. And on that way and as I stumble, I'll get back up, and I won't give up. I will try again next time. And when I stumble again, I will be kind to myself, pick myself up, and keep moving forward, right? And being thoughtful about how you're communicating with other people in those conversations, so you can be able to catch yourself and be thoughtful about how you're interacting with them, right? Okay, so, but what I would challenge you to then do is to think about some of those situations and to say, all right, this next week, I'm going to intentionally try to practice X, whatever one skill is. And maybe it's the way that you introduce, maybe it's the way that you stand, maybe it's the way that, how you look at somebody, and say, I'm going to be intentional about this. I'm going to know that I'm going to make a mistake in this, but I'm going to try this new thing. Now, all of this, what I'm talking about here, is just general communication and relationship skills building, right? This, in this sort of context, can be a really helpful and necessary process, along with a million other things. But guess what? I can't do a 50-hour podcast on this question, unfortunately. So we got to pick some things, right? But this is one exercise that you can do that would help you to maybe improve things if those things need to be improved. If that trusted friend or that therapist says, you are way overblowing, you are making mountains out of molehills, then perhaps response prevention is going to be most necessary, right? Response prevention is catching yourself in the compulsive behaviors. Maybe it's self-flagellation, maybe it's beating yourself up, maybe it's that constant scrutiny and that rumination about what you have done, or playing situations out in the future about stuff that you could do, will do, might do, and trying to play out every different little scenario so that you know that you have done the right thing. Maybe it's that. Maybe it is, again, it's a term that I heard recently is virtuing, doing things that is above and beyond to prove to others that you are such a good person. Let me talk about all the things that, or the places that I'm donating to. Let me talk about all the good and charitable works that I'm doing. Let me film myself doing something nice for somebody else. Don't film yourself doing something nice, internet. Just go do something nice. It doesn't need to be filmed. All right, anyways. So obviously all of that's going to be important. But there are some exposures you can also do in this process, and it's going to be to tolerate this possibility that you are creepy, or this possibility that you have done or will do something creepy in the future. So some things might be just to simply say and to sit with the discomfort of the phrase, maybe I am creepy, maybe I'm being gross, or maybe I'm misogynistic, and to sit with the feeling. It's not to say that you are, it's this saying, this phrase makes me feel uncomfortable and causes me to jump to these compulsive actions that I hate. So what we're learning to do is to sit with the thought that maybe I'm this bad person, and to treat it with thoughtfulness, to respond to it rather than react to it. Compulsions are the reaction to something, not a thoughtful, measured response. Because the thought can be, maybe I'm creepy. And the answer could be, maybe I'm not, right? Because we can have a thoughtful response to that, but OCD and compulsion causes you to knee-jerk reaction to say, maybe I'm creepy because it's a fact, I must be, therefore I need to take action. So we sit with the feelings that come up with maybe I'm creepy. You escalate that to I was so creepy. Maybe we say in the morning, I'm going to go out there and be super creepy to freaking everybody today. And we do that until our anxiety starts coming down. We do this without then saying, but I'm actually a good person. Or we do that and we don't say, we say, I'm going to go out and be super creepy, except in these places, and I'm going to repent of it later today. We just say, I'm going to go be creepy. It's kind of like I can say, I'm going to go out and kill and eat my kids today. Doesn't mean I'm gonna. It means I'm saying a phrase. If it produces a ton of anxiety and fear, which it does not in me, then I need to deal with that feeling. But saying something does not make it fact, right? Thoughts and feelings aren't facts. Okay. Another thing you can do, play the one-up game with yourself, right? If your brain gives you this thought of maybe I'm creepy, you go, ooh, that is creepy. Man, I could even do this, or I could say this, or I could act in this way, or I could do that with my hands, or this with my face, or I could say it like this, or some other way where you're trying to one-up that and say, yeah, boy, those are all creepy, and I'm going to sit with the possibility that I could say that, or that I did say that, or that I might say that. Doesn't mean that we're going to. It means that we're saying these things. And it means that we are sitting with the possibility that we could and tolerating a thought and this discomfort that comes up from it. Obviously, scripting is going to be important, or scripting could be helpful about situations where you are, in fact, creepy to other people and has terrible outcomes, etc. I would encourage you to watch movies where other people are creepy, or other men are creepy towards women. Now, this could be socially creepy towards other people, just kind of relationally creepy. And I would say I kind of put like Napoleon Dynamite in that. I know it's kind of like a light creepy, but he's kind of a weirdo. It's awkward, but maybe that would fit for you. You could also watch movies where somebody is violent towards women, or there's the anticipation of violence towards women, or perhaps sexually violent, or they're overtly sexual. So think about like what is the story and what is the narrative for you that would fit that. And then lastly, obviously, as I mentioned before, resisting compulsions that confirm you aren't creepy, or confirm that you're a good person, or the going way above and beyond and out of the way. So I hope this was helpful in giving you a way to think about this, and a way to challenge this, right? In a way to consider whether or not the things that you're doing are indeed helpful for you, or if they, in some ways you're finding that they are actually not helpful and are pulling you away from the sort of person that you're trying to be. Or is it just a thing and you can segment the exaggerated parts of it and appreciate and take in the information for what it is, or maybe even using it for good in some fashion. And again, there are very specific scenarios that this would that all of this would take place, and this would be something that If you were on my couch, we'd be processing through. But I'm going to leave you all with that today. Thank you so much for this question. If somebody has feedback or would like to add something to it, message me over at Instagram. Again, Fearcast Podcast over at Instagram. You can also message me over at the podcast itself at fearcastpodcast.com or wherever else you find it. So everybody, thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for letting me be part of your recovery story. And until next time, take a risk. Challenge yourself and don't take your brain too seriously. Bye. Thank you for listening to the Fearcast. If you would like your question answered on a future episode, please click on the Submit a Question link at fearcastpodcast.com. If you would like your question answered sooner, please send me a recording of your question to questions@fearcastpodcast.com or by sending me an audio message through Instagram by DMing me at fearcastpodcast on Instagram. If you like the Fearcast, please write a review on your podcast platform of choice. Please remember that the Fearcast is not a substitute for psychotherapy. If you need a little bit of help in your recovery, please go over to fearcastpodcast.com and click on the Find Help link, and there's going to be some information for you there. So until next time, take a risk, challenge yourself, and don't take your brain too seriously. Bye.